Okay, so here with me I have my very good friend Tyler. Be prepared for a plethora of metaphors. That's the language that he speaks. English,
Swear
metaphors,
words.
profanity. Am I missing anything? A little bit of Spanish.
It's un poquito.
Un poquito. Amazing. Tyler, I only know one of your many businesses, but before we get to the business and the inspirational stuff, let's just start super easy and basic. A little bit about you personally.
Sure. So I grew up in a little town in West Kentucky, actually multiple little towns in West Kentucky. Became pretty adept at lifting heavy things. I was fairly convinced I was thinking I'm going to go join the Olympics or the circus or something when I got older. I was
Me too.
just under about an 1,800 pound three lift guy. When I was 17, I was pretty strong. Um, and was eating a lot to fuel that sort of an energy. Somewhere in the order of about 8 to 10,000 calories a day, give or take. And then when I went off to college, I realized that I didn't really have to train in order to eat 8 to 10,000 calories a day, and also that I really, really liked liquor. And so I found myself in a place where by the time that I had graduated and gotten married and done all these fun things, I weighed just over a quarter of a US ton. So I weighed 505 pounds. I was stroke level blood pressure just about all the time. My pulse rate was in triple digits, even sitting down. Hemoglobin A1C was over 13, which means my average blood glucose was somewhere around 370 or so. Um, I would stop breathing for 60 to 90 seconds when I lay down to go to sleep and wake up gasping for air, just pretty much nonstop. Broke multiple beds, broke a chair in a Mexican restaurant, you know, blah blah. I mean, there's a whole litany of fun stuff, side stories there. But just committed myself to diet and exercise, and really trying to get a lot of the weight off, and managed to shed about 300 pounds or so of excess weight. And you just rediscovered my enjoyment of exercise, and the fact that the same diets that can kind of crucify your health can also restore your health if you're willing to sort of give yourself over to becoming comfortable with discomfort. And that manifested itself into a community called Keto Gains with my business partner Luis, and we have helped at last estimate with respect to paid clients a little over 500,000 pounds to be shed in the last 5 years of coaching people. Within the main community, it's about a quarter of a million people. It's rough math says over 2 million pounds at this point. We've seen a lot of success really kind of grounding ourselves into our joke sometimes that we're really just telling people to eat food that grandma would recognize as food, and to do something that you enjoy for exercise every day. Jane, I know you like to dance, but we'll not do the Tyler dancing thing. It'll just be like that kid and play thing from the 1990s. But it just is one of those law of unintended consequences, right? I was going to go to med school, and then I discovered that vodka was really, really more fun than organic chemistry 2 lab. And I was an arrogant little turd and was convinced that if I read the books and knew the material before I went into class, I shouldn't have to go to class. They should just give me the final and let me pass the class and move on. And that worked up until about my junior year of college. And that's why I had 5 junior years of college, and then eventually graduated with 2 business degrees. But ended up kind of in this space where my intention was always go make a career at, some Fortune 500, Fortune 200, sort of a company, and do this thing. But, looking back retrospectively in my childhood, there was always kind of this bug towards do your own thing, be your own boss, kind of live your own life. And the more that I got involved in corporate America, the more that I sort of realized that I joke and it's sort of half joking that, coaching people put a little bit of my soul back into me every day just so I could go to my day job and have it take a little bit away, at the end of every afternoon. And so I was kind of net neutral in terms of like what it was doing to the soul inside my body. And it was just insufferable to the point of misery, because when I started getting that opportunity to sort of help people to sort of get out of their own way, it made me realize just how much I felt like I was sticking my head in a toaster oven and cranking it to high every morning when I got up and, had to like put on, dress clothes or whatever and go to meetings to meet customers where the stuff we did or didn't do really didn't matter. We were a commodity. We weren't really helping these people. We could have been selling toilet paper as easily as we could have been selling network connectivity, and it really wouldn't have mattered. We would have been treated the same way, and their life would have been exactly the same as it was. And so after 2.5 years of working full time and coaching clients, at one point running, almost 200 by myself, at a given point in time, and also working a full day job, 18 plus hours a day, 6 to 7 days a week, some days not sleeping 3 days in a row. It just was too much. And the company that I was with, who likes the color red and their name starts with the letter V, and you can probably figure out who that is if you consider it was telecommunications. And, they offered an early retirement, and I said, yes, please. Where do I sign and where do I stand? And they postured that they weren't going to accept it. And then when I said, well, I'm just not going to come to work then, and they said, well, okay, then I guess we'll do it. And so they did. So my foray into entrepreneurship was basically kickstarted by my breaking a chair at a Mexican restaurant. So
that I did not hear that version of the story before. That is amazing and crazy, and like whatever the negative version of amazing is, like, wow. So I know that you used to be in corporate, and I don't know, like, knowing what I know about you now, I don't know how you survived, because you have this like you have that hustle, you have that like entrepreneurial drive to be like, this is what we're doing today. I can change the world with this idea. What are we going to do tomorrow? In fact, I spend a lot of my time chasing you and trying to like reel you in a little bit, professionally speaking.
I really thought you were going to say, I don't know how you survived because HR departments hate you. It's like one simple trick. Look, the reality is I've always kind of had a knack for quickly identifying problems and being able to address them. And I think that, years ago, I had a business mentor of mine say that, value equals yield over maintenance. And I think that that's really a great model to look at with respect to how I was viewed. I could be a colossal pain in the ass. I know I can be. It's one of my most endearing qualities as an employee and as a business partner. But nobody outworks me, nobody outthinks me, because stuff lives in my brain nonstop, and I'm constantly a sort of an engineer at heart, tinkering with ideas and concepts. And so, Jay, that's why you chase me like like a fox after a rabbit. It's my brain is sort of bouncing from, but if we did it this way, we could save 15 seconds and 3 steps and whatever. So I think a lot of my survival skills had to do with having a job. That was always kind of important, bill paying, having a mortgage, that sort of thing. But secondarily, I had some really good mentors along the way who taught me, but also who gave me a whole lot of air cover to go pursue a lot of the things that I wanted to pursue, knowing full well that they were getting 70% of my effort and energy, because, to put it in the way that my last boss in telecom said, 70% of you is better than 200% of most of the other people on my team. So I didn't have the heart to tell him that 70% of me was, I automated your spreadsheet with macros calculations, and so I do 15 minutes of work a day, and you should have fired me a long time ago. But like I said, I'm an engineer, so faster, simpler, and more efficient is always better.
Well, that's kind of like, I thought you were a very interesting, for lack of a better word, specimen for this interview, because so far, like, a lot of the people I talk to, it's very, I don't want to say straightforward, like, what's your journey? What was your breaking point? And like you're just like this fireball of everything. And that's actually what one of the things I wanted to ask you was like, how do you, because I know a lot of entrepreneurs share this particular trait, is that like our brains are like pew, like 14,000 places at once. I mean, like there have been days where you've like fired off, like, here's a spreadsheet, here's a chart, here's a PDF, here's a flow chart. And then I did this. And then like, and then you're like, and then you're also balancing other businesses and you're also balancing a family. And it's like, what do you do to keep yourself sane and organized being a like wired entrepreneur?
Is drugs an acceptable
And you
answer
can't say
here?
drinking.
That's why I went with drugs instead of drinking. No, look, I'll be honest, and I tend to be pretty shoot from the hip, and you know that about me. I don't always do a great job of that. I don't think that any of us really do, if we're honest with ourselves. I think there are days when the breaks beat the boys, and you suck it up and deal with the fact that try again tomorrow. Make sure that you learn from this and kind of move on. Um, as the number of businesses, as the number of things is growing, it's becoming definitely a bigger challenge. I think the first thing that I found is you reach a point in business where you can't be both chief operating officer and lead janitor. You have to start delegating roles, responsibilities, and things to other people who themselves are experts at what they do. Um, Sometimes learning who are experts and who aren't. Sometimes that comes with a little trial and error, but I think that it's the nature of an entrepreneur to want to sort of be all things. And then once you've fostered this baby, it's really hard to understand that you have to give the feeding and the nursing and the caring for it over to someone else, because it feels a little like sort of Solomon's quandary, right? Am I splitting my baby in half to solve this problem? And for me, it's been a lot of that challenge has been the bigger challenge. It's, nobody does it like I do, right? Like in your brain, like you sort of have that mentality where this was my inception and my creation from the outset, and nobody really understands the motives and the passions. And I think surrounding yourself with people who may not understand it, but who have a heart to learn, to understand what drives you and what drives that business and what the motivations and the factors are, um, has been is a really interesting journey. And I think a lot of us in business go through it. It's part of that whole scaling up process in general, is really trying to understand at what point I have to either make enough money from this business that I can hire people to take over to help me scale it, or to realize that this is not the most beneficial use of my time. That while this is profitable, it's profitable for somebody else, and you should either sell the business, or you should close the business, or you should revamp how you're doing the business to make that business more self-sufficient, or to make it more profitable, or whatever you need to do to sort of scale it. Not every business is going to grow to be a 9 figures or 10 figures business. And that's a tough one to hear as an entrepreneur, because you always have this vision that, if the brakes go right and everything works, this is going to be a $35 million business by the end of next year. And I'm like, yes. And if 5 things go wrong, you're going to be bankrupt in 14 months. So like, you just have to sort of weigh that risk reward. And I think a lot of it is trying to keep as much margin as you can in your life, so that you can think more coherently and more soundly, and that every decision isn't the one that's going to make or break the mortgage payment for that month, or that's not going to determine whether or not the kids get to eat, or whatever the thing is, right? That trying to be, we're wired to be risk takers, I think, intuitively as entrepreneurs by and large, and realizing that we can be risk takers, but the people that depend on us suffer the consequences of those risks. If we swing and miss, if we strike out trying to hit a home run instead of playing safe for a double, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. It's hard because, but if I just do this one simple trick, then I can, grow this business. And there's never a bad opportunity to a good entrepreneur. There's always an opportunity. And so there's that discipline of just, I tell people all the time, the magic of a simple word, no.
Hmm. Oh,
I have turned down probably 5 or 10 opportunities for every one that I've actually said, yeah, I think we can make a go of that. Um,
you need to
and
teach
I'm
that skill because entrepreneurs by and large are like, ooh, ooh,
ooh, piece of candy.
ooh.
Ooh, piece of candy. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That was a
And
very
I
long-winded
can't even
answer.
believe you're saying that because like your email signature has like 14 logos in it for like your various ventures du jour, like I don't know,
So
like how do you wake up in the morning and like organize your brain being an engineer? And I have lots of engineers in my family, so I have a particular appreciation for it. And
so
note, did not become an engineer.
I think that one of the things that has helped a lot is we really early on defined what we as a company wanted to be about, and that was helping people. We didn't want to start like, oh, and also we make popcorn. Like, that's just not a venture that would ever really appeal to us because while we're completely content to be a part of the food industry, if an opportunity presents itself, I'm not looking to try and make different junk food, right? Like I'm not trying to look to do something that isn't really helping people to get from A to B wherever that is in their life and in whatever stage. And so we launched a medical practice, which kind of ticks the box for helping people. Our coaching practice and nutritional practice, much the same. Um, we do a consulting practice with some other business partners and outsourcing business. So sort of near shoring for technical type resources. That business is largely kind of hands off for me for the most part, but we launched an investment business out of Mexico, looking at doing some investments into Latin America and Spanish-speaking countries to try and help bring health businesses to the forefront there, because our chief export into Latin America isn't goods and services, it's diabetes. I mean, like straight up, America is exporting its junk food and its bad dietary habits and its lifestyle problems into Mexico. And Mexico's passing them to Panama and Guatemala and Honduras and on into South America. It's just expanding. Yeah, you can look at the obesity data and the overweight data, and it's abundantly clear. And so we've really been trying to focus that energy on how do we help people in different aspects and different avenues of their life. And it's a pretty broad category, but it keeps us out of the weeds of going into, and also we have those vacuums that scoop up dog poop from the backyards of people. And it's like, and no dig at anybody who does that, but like that's not in the wheelhouse of what we do. And so I think that helps a lot to sort of gatekeep or to frame it. The other thing that I really figured out, and it's actually something I stole from Elon Musk. My Monday is kind of a catch-all day. I host most of my meetings on Mondays if I can avoid, putting them off any other day, for a couple of reasons. One, I'm least likely to verbally murder somebody on a Monday than I am on like a Tuesday or Wednesday.
You're so nice to me. I don't know what that means about me, but
But but also, and I think this is where a little bit of the engineer shows up. I tend to take sort of a day the rest of the week and primarily focus on just the business that is that. So hey, all right, go health business was kind of like a Tuesday thing for me. Wednesday I tend to focus on the work we're doing with Crimson Guard, which is our consulting and outsourcing firm. And so I kind of stagger those days in a way that allows me to give 80 to 90% of my focus in any given day to just one avenue or one area of the business. And it has really paid a lot of dividends in terms of just giving me the freedom to mentally say, hey, that stuff still exists. I acknowledge it still exists, but it exists in a different space and time than right now. And so I'm not ignoring it. I'm not like going, la, 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 I can't hear you, or burying my head in the sand. I'm just acknowledging that that's a Wednesday problem, or that that's a Thursday issue, or that's a Friday conversation. And I tend to stagger those kinds of things out. Um,
really
it,
awesome tip. Like siloing your time and energy so that you're not always being pulled in a lot of directions. That's brilliant, actually.
it really helped to be able to run a number of businesses and not to feel like you're constantly pulled in 13 different directions. if a problem, and admittedly, I give myself kind of a 10 to 20% grace. There are a lot of problems that exist in business that are both, urgent and important. But the vast majority of the problems that we face are either urgent and unimportant, which are just loud noise that really doesn't affect anything if you fix it. It's like a squeaky wheel that you've looked over and doesn't have a mechanical flaw. It's just squeaky and loud. Or they are, they're important, but they're not urgent, which is the other side of the coin. And those are the ones that are the thinkers. You really have to spend time to make sure you get it right. And rushing to a conclusion or an answer is just a problem. And when I realized that there's kind of that 4 quadrant model of problems that we face in business, and the ones that are unimportant and unurgent just get flushed down the toilet because they're turds anyway. But the other two things are, one is noise, the other is a thinker. And then the stuff that's urgent and important, it's gonna force its way into today's shit, whether you want it to or not. And so you can just accept that if I have that little 10 to 15% buffer where a problem can show up and it doesn't completely derail my day, I can give it 30 minutes or an hour, make a decision or do a thing, and then jump right back into what I should be doing the rest of the day to make sure that I stay productive. And that's a lot of it, is just making sure that the time that I do commit to business is productive time, that it's not a time when I'm sitting here watching YouTube videos out of one eye and, reading emails out of the other and, playing a video game on the television screen at the office and whatever else. Like that's, I've seen people try and do that in business. I think a lot of like the hipster generation has really tried to sort of do that multitasking, fun and family environment. And when you get a chance to come to the office here in Nashville, you'll see it's a pretty bohemian existence. There's couches and televisions, and we like to be comfortable. But at the same time, when it's work time, we're at the desk, we're doing the work, we're holding the conversations, we're making things happen. And the fact that we've got a reclining couch where we can put a presentation up on a 65-inch television is just a nicety to have, because the whiteboards are on either side of it for work. So I'd love to tell you that, like, it's one simple trick or it's one easy step, but like that was the thing that really empowered my ability not to get completely overwhelmed. I guess two things really. The first, as I mentioned before, is really getting the right people in the right places. So it's not getting rid of all responsibility. It's just finding the places that are the biggest pain points for you, the places where you're weakest or that you're inefficient, and getting the people and the roles to do that thing for you. You would know something about that because you've managed to not smother me with a pillow while working with me for a while. But on the other side of the coin, it's also making sure that the minute that I walk into the office to the minute that I shut my computer down is in some way productive towards the tasks that I actually had set for today, rather than just stuff. Because if I'm not careful, all the squeaky wheel BS just jams up the day, and all the important stuff that needed to get accomplished just never gets accomplished because a lot of it is super quiet, even if it's important.
Yeah. So here's an interesting question. And like, from the moment you took that severance, or, when they were like, you're not going to do it, and you're like, I'm going to do it, what would you tell yourself then that you know now?
I wish I had a simple answer to that question. Like, I know that, like, I've given
You
you
don't have
18
simple
long-winded
answers to
answers.
anything, Tyler,
Yeah,
and that's why you're here.
I tend to be a person who believes that you get what you tolerate, you don't get what you deserve. And I think that it took me a long time in my life to realize that it was not, and that's not a me, that's a Henry Cloud quote. So don't go telling people I'm smart and
It
came
was
up with
good though.
something on my own.
It was
Um,
good.
yeah, and that's a tough one, right? And I think in terms of pricing yourself for services and putting yourself out there, you have to have that level of confidence. And I think one of the earmarks of engineers is we tend to make great number sixes. We don't tend to make great number ones. Part of that is because we tend to always be was a president, I forget which one, who was talking about economists, and he said I would give half of what I own to someone who could find me an economist with only one hand, because like you always say, like on the other hand, on the other hand. And so like the notion is like, they're constantly in that state of like comparative analysis. And so they're sort of stuck in that analysis paralysis, and they never really move off of the decision making. Not long ago, I had somebody put a thought in my head, and it was a brilliant thought. He said, what would happen if you freed yourself up from the notion that every decision you made had to be the correct one? What would happen if you allowed yourself to believe that roughly right was acceptable? And if I could go back 10 or 15 years, 20 years and talk to myself, it would be something around that conversation, the notion that you're not always going to have all of the right information to know that the decision that you made is the right one, and you're going to have to act on instinct and intuition and experience, and you're just going to have to accept that there are opportunity costs that come with every decision that we make, and that decisions divide. That's just what they do. And so you make the decision as best as you can and you move on with it, because I tend to be somebody who weighs the pros and cons of everything over and over before I make a decision, believe it or not, with your comment about my rapid decision making. It's lived in my head for at least 6 months before I open my mouth and say anything to anybody. I can assure you of that. But the other side of the coin is,
That's
is
very
I also tend to live in retrospective sort of post analysis. And I think a lot of us as entrepreneurs do. We swing and we miss, or we swing and we hit a triple instead of a home run. And now all of a sudden it's busy like, oh, well, shit, if only I had done X, Y, or Z, then it would have been if I'd used my hips more and I'd gotten my elbow underneath the ball. And, and I'm using all these baseball analogies, and I freaking hate baseball, but I enjoy
Today,
going to
you know about
games.
baseball and pregnancy today. That's your theme.
It
Your
was
metaphors du
kids
jour.
more than pregnancy, but still.
Both.
So for those of you that obviously weren't on the call, so Jay and I had a call earlier. We're doing some stuff with business, and I was using an analogy talking about children and raising children. And then all of a sudden I realized, like 40 minutes into the conversation, I used like 3 analogies, and all of them had to do with like birthing, raising, or caring for kids. And I was like,
Yeah.
this is a
They were
weird.
all very maternal metaphors too. And there was a
Because
lot
when
of
you
women
look
on
at
the
me,
call with kids, and we're like, uh-huh,
you
uh-huh.
immediately look at me and think, what a maternal, guy, right?
Yeah.
So
You are
yeah,
very caring. You coach people.
I
So
care about people enough to say the things that most people won't say to people. There's a
that is an
fantastic book.
accurate description of you. I love that.
There's a fantastic book out there for those of you that don't mind wading through a little bit of theology, because it's not really theologically focused, but the guy writing it is himself an avowed Christian. It's a guy named Henry Cloud's, the quote that I mentioned earlier. It's a book called Necessary Endings. And one of the comments that he makes in there is he talks about the difference between harm and hurt. And it really registered with me. And it's something that I've carried through all of my businesses in terms of, and I think a lot of us as business leaders struggle. Like, how do I let someone go when their performance is just not up to snuff, or when, business takes a downturn and I can't afford to keep that person on staff or whatever. And, one of the analogies that he used in there, and I thought it was brilliant. He said, when you go to a dentist to have a root canal or a crown or whatever, that dentist is probably going to hurt you. And it's not because they're doing it because they're masochistic or because they're sadist or whatever. They're doing it because, so as not to harm you in the long term, they have to hurt you in the short term. And it was so sort of enlightening to one of the biggest problems we have is that we surround ourselves with sycophants, right? Like, we surround ourselves with people, especially as we become successful in business, with people who just tell you how great you are, and stroke metaphorical parts of you, and they do all these sorts of things to tell you how wonderful you are, and they get you #1 boss mugs and all this crazy nonsense. And then you realize something: you're not what they think you are. And the dirty little secret is they don't think what they tell you they think that you are either. we
Yeah.
have to be willing, if we're going to be good coaches, good mentors, good leaders, to say hard things with the kindest words that we can possibly muster to say. I don't relish the notion of telling somebody that their performance sucks and I'm letting them go, but I'm also not going to shy away from it. But the difference is, I'm not going to do that having never broached the topic with that person 6 or 8 times beforehand about the examples of when they've dropped the ball or when things have slipped. It's not going to come as a surprise. But when it happens, I tend to look at it more as a freeing event. I'm freeing you to go pursue something you don't suck at, versus continuing. Because at the end of the day, if you keep an employee like that on staff, who's really being hurt? It's not them, it's you. And if I'm being paid as a coach, or and we do a lot of business coaching and stuff as well, if I'm being paid to coach you, whether it's professionally or personally, and I'm not willing to say hard truths to you, I'm just another sycophant, except the way that you're making me feel good about making you feel good is I'm hugging you, and while I'm hugging you, my hand is slowly sliding down towards your pants pocket to get into that wallet. And we've all worked with coaches before, I'm sure, who the entire time you're working with them, it was like, oh, you're so good. That'll be $100, please. And everything is wonderful and there's nothing here. You're doing a great job. 250, please. And it feels like you're calling a 900 number from back in the day, or like it feels like you're calling Sister Cleo or whatever to like get your fortune
It's
read.
Cleo. Yeah.
Miss Cleo, sorry, a lot of mercy.
I remember those commercials.
You just got to get the
Yeah,
hat and all the craziness.
it's Leo.
Um, but yeah, we've all faced those situations, and I think it's foolish of us to allow ourselves to be surrounded by those types of people. And so I think that by seeking out those opportunities to help people improve, even if they don't want to hear it, we're actually all made better. The business is made healthier. Your profits, because like your customers are sure as hell going to notice if you've got a 60% performer doing work for them. And they tend to vote with their wallet. They don't tend to vote with, like casting ballots. They're not going to call you and be like, I'm disappointed and I'm deducting 30%. They just fire you and go to the next person who's on down the trail. So yeah, that and fire the assholes. That would be the other advice I would give myself. I have later in life learned that your crazy is not worth your money. So if I don't like you, and it takes a lot for me not to like somebody, but if you're insane, I'm just going to send you your money back, wish you well, and send you packing. And I mean, I could pull up emails and show you conversations. We were like, what do you mean you're fine? I gave you money. And I'm like, yes, and I gave it back to you.
Yeah.
But we're halfway through the program. I
I
don't care.
you
Here's
know
all of your money back.
right, like a lot of people watching this are like, "Oh, well that's common sense," but at the same time, we have all dealt with crazy and like entrepreneurs, like we're like so excitable and like our brains are so far in the future that a lot of times we sacrifice like the present, like whether it's our time and our energy or like putting up with a problem that we're just like, oh, this person's kind of crazy, or, okay, maybe they're helping or they mean well, because like our brains are like, we're changing the world. And
We're very
you're
high
nodding
minded.
because you get it.
We're high minded people. I had a friend of mine really denigrate what I do, but he nailed it. His name's Steve Seals, and he's a brilliant dude. He's also enormous. He's like 6'8" and looks like he could be a pro wrestler. But Seals said to me one time, he said, the truth of the matter is when it comes to telecom, we've already established what we do. Now we're just haggling on the price. And I was like, boy, that's a really dirty metaphor. And he was like, but he's like, it's true of all business. And I think as entrepreneurs, it's very true. We're so committed to like returning a profit at all costs that we're high-minded, but we're short-sighted. So yes, we're changing the world, but we're so busy changing the world that every dollar looks like a good dollar. Every opportunity feels like a good opportunity. And coming back to the message of no, when your coaches, when your clients, when your customers, when the people in your employ are going, I I hate myself a little more every time I have to talk with that person, or every time I have to engage with that individual, or when it comes to getting the billing done for that customer, that company, it's 60 days on net 30 terms, and now we're in arrears on other payments because fire them. It was the hardest lesson I ever had to learn. Your crazy is not worth your money. It never is, because it doesn't get better. Crazy doesn't heal itself because they get to know you better.
Oh, ooh, we all
Um,
needed to hear that. We
it
all
doesn't.
needed to hear that.
There was a concept early in the law in the US that said a thing begun in error can be presumed to continue in the same accord. And all that really means is, look, if something started broken, it's not going to magically fix itself. Like, there's not like some anti-entropy law that says that, hey, if I just keep this batshit crazy customer around long enough, they're going to right the ship, and they're going to stop being manic depressive, and they're going to fix all the problems, and they're going to start taking all their medicine regularly, and everything is going to be perfect, and the world is going to be sunshine and rainbows and unicorn. It's not. And we should all
Mm-mm.
just
I feel
accept
like
the reality.
you're giving relationship advice, right? Like, ladies and gentlemen, this is also marriage
I know. We
advice.
should just
Like,
get
you don't
deep
have to fix
voice going, This is the love line late at night.
yeah. Mm,
So but it's true. I mean, there is relationships are relationships, whether they're personal, professional, whatever they are. The dynamic that exists between your customer and you, between your employee and you, I mean, it's all just relationship driven stuff. And if the relationship is toxic at any point, the entire relationship is inherently toxic. You know,
yeah.
enabling relationships don't get better, they get worse.
I can't nod big enough. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I want to, this is so good. I do want to lighten it a little bit, a little bit
Well, that's what's
before
not
we,
light. I mean, we can talk about death and taxes while we're at it.
yeah,
I mean,
right.
goodness.
That's next. No.
Those are the
um,
last questions on your list. Got it. Okay.
right. So dealer's choice, you can talk about health, business, consulting, whatever. What is a tip that you want to leave people with?
God, I thought I just did that.
No, like here's a little gem for you. Not like a word
Um,
of wisdom. This is like a lighter, like here's a little fun thing for you.
Nobody at the gym is paying any attention to you.
That's a good one. That is a
No,
good one.
nobody at the office cares how good you are. Nobody that you call your friend in your work environment is actually your friend. Those are really melancholy examples, but I think that they're also kind of back to your conversation about the stars. They're enlightening, right? Like they're impactful and they're empowering, in that if you can free yourself from those constraints, it opens the world of opportunity to you to stop caring. You let you dance like nobody's watching, or whatever that stupid cliche thing is that's on
Yeah.
every dance wall at every dance studio I've ever been in. um you, because so often we're hamstrung on making decisions because, like, what if it's the wrong one? What if somebody sees me dressed like a fool? Like, I joke sometimes that I didn't start 5 businesses to wear a dress shirt. I refuse to wear anything but like sweatpants or blue jeans and a t-shirt to the office. And the day that I have to change is the day that whatever that business is can kiss my ass. Like, I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
And then I would just encourage people to figure out kind of who they are, and to realize that they're not so important that they matter to other people to the extent they think that they do, because I think it can be very, very freeing to go and try new things when you don't really worry about the outcome. You're just treating it like you're trying on a pair of jeans, rather than like you bought them and now you have to fit into them.
Love that. So, and just so everyone, when before I hit record, we were talking about like
That's true. I
some,
forgot
some
you weren't recording at the time.
yeah.
Sorry. I
So
was
no,
like,
that's
what
okay.
star analogy?
We were talking about religion and spirituality, so that that's like a recording no. But in general, I was saying that, like, some people think that insignificance, so this is kind of on key with what you were saying, insignificance is a hard pill to swallow. We're one of 7 billion people on the planet. I look at the sky and I think, oh my gosh, we're like nothing. We are nothing of nothing of nothing, the microscopic fraction of the multiverse. And some people find that really frightening, and they're like, oh, I don't mean anything. That's so sad. And to me, I think that's my spirituality, is I think that is the coolest thing in the world, knowing that I'm all I got. There's these businesses and me trying every day, and sometimes I fall flat on my face. Done that more than once. And sometimes it's a good day, sometimes it's a bad day, and I just think that's really cool.
Awesome.
I love
So
that.
there you go. That's the star story that I
Yeah.
didn't think
So
about the
that's
fact
the
nobody was
star
recording at the
right
time.
right? So my last question is like usually the easiest one, but might be the hardest for you. How can people find you if they want to learn more? But like you probably have so many brands. Like, how do we keep track? What's your favorite way to be
I,
contacted right
I tell people all the time, you can find me on all the social media outlets. I'll be the Tyler Cartwright that looks like this. There aren't many of us that look like this. Most of the Tylers that exist are younger than 30. I was the kid who couldn't find his name on the license plate at Disney World.
now? Really?
Well, I'm 42, so like Tyler was not exactly a common name at the time. Um, I do tell a fun story, and I always love to embarrass myself and self-deprecate where I can.
Who you?
I had the Twitter handle for a long time, Tyler Cartwright 2, because some asshole had Tyler Cartwright and never posted ever, but they
Really?
had it locked down. I had sent messages to the person like constantly, like I had a calendar reminder. Everything was like, dude, really? Come on. Like, you're not using this. I run a business. I have a brand. I'd like to have that Twitter handle. Just swap with me, dude. Like, I'll give mine up. I'll make it gibberish and then I'll give it back to you. Just give it to nothing. No response, no anything. Well, I had an issue with security on my Twitter account a while back. And when I submitted a request to revamp the password, Twitter sent me a message and said, okay, well, we have 2 accounts associated with this email. Which one do you want? Apparently, either drunk or way, way too sleepy, I had created a Twitter account for Tyler Cartwright like years ago and somehow blacked it out from my memory. And so I had been messaging me
You're so
every 3 months for like 2 years, trying to get my own Twitter handle from me. It was the most Tyler, you idiot moment that I had in a very, very long time. So the only one I don't have for Tyler Cartwright, Facebook is a Tyler Cartwright. And then Instagram is Ty_Cartwright, because like every other variation of Tyler Cartwright was gone. Tyler at tyler-cartwright.com is the easiest way to reach me on email. I respond to smoke signal, social media messages, carrier pigeons. Like, basically, if it doesn't exist in the world of communication anymore, I have a means to respond to it, apparently. So email,
I'm still
text message.
laughing at that Twitter story. It's so funny. I would have loved it if you were like, and then I sued that bastard. And it was
You send a lawsuit to yourself. Like, you
you,
send service out and the
you get
sheriff shows up
served.
at your door 15 minutes later. He's like, we're suing you.
Yeah,
um,
take that.
um, but yeah, I mean,
I'm trying not to cackle on these shows, but sometimes it
that's okay. Let the cackle out. Nobody's going to judge you
just
for it. It's all good. Um,
suing
but
yourself is high up there. That's great.
Jade, I mean, I think you know me well enough. Like, if there's somebody I can help, if you've got questions, concerns, comments, if you just want to tell me that I suck as a interview partner, I'm good with that too. Just shoot me a note. I'm happy to wade in where I can, or to offer feedback or advice, or draw
Well,
you a
I'm so
stupid picture of
glad.
a hand turkey.
Yeah, I'm so glad you came because, like both of our industries and our mutual industries and communities, there's entrepreneurs everywhere. And I don't know anyone as like busy and multifaceted as you. So this was really fun for me and I appreciate you doing this for
Well,
me.
thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, friends. Bye.